Welcome. Bienvenidos a todos los que hablan español. This is the episode of Telescope Talks, a product of the Telescope. My name is Monica Garcia. I am a staff writer and a copy editor with the Telescope. And I'm here with...
My name is Kaylin Garcia. I'm also a staff writer.
We are going to introduce our guest today. Here she is.
My name is Janelle Harvey. I'm a student peer mentor here at Palomar College, working in the counseling department, and I'm also president of the Umoja club here on campus.
Thank you. So we have Janelle here today to kind of help us with our topic, and we are going to be talking about the colorism in the Latinx communities. So I personally, my mom is Mexican and my dad is American. So I have Mexican culture. Kaylin, what about you?
My dad is Mexican American and my mom is Salvadorian.
My mom is full Puerto Rican and my dad is half African American and Liceno Native American.
A lot of mixtures here in this room, so that's why I think it's gonna be good to have all of our different opinions going because we all have different backgrounds in some ways. So to start off, Janelle, we kind of wanted to ask you, since you are Umoja president, what kind of led you to decide to join Umoja?
Yeah, that's a neat question. So pretty much, I would say what drove me to join Umoja was needing a sense of community, and having people who looked like me and who kind of have gone through similar struggles, being mixed or kind of identifying more with one culture rather than the other, and trying to navigate the educational system as well, because obviously that's kind of a struggle, just sometimes being like the odd one out in a classroom full of predominantly white, and you're just like the one brown girl that's kind of standing out. And so joining the Umoja community gave me the confidence that I needed and the reassurance that I do belong in the I would say educational setting, and it also kind of just led me to a group of people who loved me and actually cared for me, and I love that. So especially after feeling alone on campus.
That's a wonderful answer, and I can only imagine how it was to kind of find that family, and that comfort, because especially as brown or black people, it's easy to feel displaced in these settings. So I appreciate that answer. To follow up with that, I wanted to talk about, I saw through your socials you had a Zoom meeting you did based on colorism. So I kind of wanted to know what, I did my background, I'm a reporter, I do that. But so I wanted to ask you, what were some of the main points you kind of covered in that meeting you had?
Yeah, okay, so it was a pretty neat presentation. I did not think as many people who showed up to it were going to. The title of it was officially Colorism Within Youth and Our Society. And it actually started off as a project from my English class and ended up turning into something that I could actually present and inform people about. And so I kind of just touched on primarily what colorism is, because colorism and racism can kind of be misunderstood or maybe seen as the same thing in some ways. And so colorism is kind of just where you dislike that person based off of the tone of their skin, regardless of what race they are. And when you're being racist, that's obviously when a whole group is marginalized and discriminated and pushed to the side. And so with colorism, I kind of wanted to highlight the key issues with I guess I could say students of color, darker skin tones compared to lighter skin tones, even if they were from the same race, because sometimes maybe being lighter skin you might get more opportunities as compared to someone who is the same race, but they're darker. Mm-hmm. And so automatically they're associated with being bad or kind of ugly or just, you know, what do I want to say? Like
unworthy.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
kind of. Yeah, pretty much like that. And so I definitely wanted to highlight that. And then I also kind of I did a little bit of research for like during the segregation period of like the 1940s, 1840s. 1840s, sorry. With Kenneth and Mamie Clark, where they did the doll test with kids, and it was like kids of all different backgrounds, like ranging from black to white, and they pretty much put 2 baby dolls in front of the kids and asked which they thought was like good, which one they thought was pretty, which one they thought was smarter. And sometimes the black kids would actually choose the white dolls. Well, most times, not even sometimes, majority of the time, they were choosing the white dolls as being seen as something like better and more pure. And that's that internalized racism that's taught within the household. And so I also wanted to, you know, kind of shed light on that. And that's like some more data research that I ended up doing, and actually asking people whether or not they thought that racism was taught within the household, or, you know, if kids can be racist. And yeah, so those were like some of the main points, I guess you could say, for my presentation.
Wow, the doll one's like jarring to hear about. Like it's just like those are children, and like I guess, which is just it's so ingrained into little kids' minds, you know. And
what do you guys think?
Yeah, so like Kaylin actually told me something about that before class. She was talking about her experience like in the Latinx community. So
yeah, so obviously I'm very fair skinned, but if you can tell by my features, a lot of people think I look Asian. I have pretty big lips, I would say. So it's a lot different, especially with kind of feeling comfortable even in your own skin. Even having that privilege, sometimes that's not, I don't want to say not enough, but it's not reassuring in a sense, because then you're still not fitting into that white beauty standard that has been, you know, put into the media. And that's why it's so normalized in the households, is because especially during this generation, I feel like parents are giving their kids a tablet, putting them in front of a television because they can't, you know, parent all the time. It's really hard, especially with having to work so much and things like that. The media is raising the children. And definitely. You know what I mean? And you're just getting constantly just thrown with this stereotype, like the Barbie dolls, like they just started, you know, releasing new Barbies with different skin tones, different hair colors, and even the princesses, all of that leads up to subconscious colorism and racism. That's not even, you know, supposed to be taught, but it you know, we're all kind of just getting fed into this like constant cycle of, you know what, we're not fitting into this white standard. That's why I feel like I'm not good enough.
Yeah, dude, it's funny you bring that up about the fairness of skin too, because I think in my experience, we have a part of my family, they come from el norte de Mexico, so that's the north of Mexico, for those who don't know. And people there tend to be a little bit more lighter skinned. And my mom, she has siblings who literally have blue eyes and like blonde hair. And that's, you know, the Spanish blood or European blood that's mixed in there. And that's why it's like the mestizo race, which is the mixed people. But I have this one cousin who she's slightly darker than everybody else. And no one's like rude to her or anything, but they always call her la morenita. And that's the thing that they say over there, or like they say things like el güero. And that's how in Mexico, it's very common for people to describe each other or give each other nicknames based on their skin tone or because of their physical appearance, which that's another topic. Like it can also be very traumatic for a lot of reasons. You know, it's like they don't mean it to be bullying, but they say it in like an almost endearing way. But it still constantly reinforces that this is how we see you initially. This is your first reaction or your first impression to everybody else, your skin color, your how you look. And so I think it's just kind of wow, like we grew up with that. And that was just normalized in our family. But trying to explain these topics to like my mom, she'd be like, oh, you're overreacting, you know? But it's like, I'm not trying to like lecture you or police you. It's just like, let's be aware of why we call people certain things. And I guess that's how, answers that, like, our first question, which is like, how does colorism play into our lives today? Like, it's still happening right now. And if you're deemed more lighter or fair skin, you're like assumed like, oh, you're an educated person, or you look smarter, like Janelle was saying with the dolls. And it's just like, why do we associate that? And so that's kind of like what I wanted to tie into. What is something that you guys know now that you didn't know before about colorism, specifically in Latinx communities?
Yeah, something, I guess, as I grew older and, actually, being like a literature major and just kind of wanting to make sure that I'm within, like, I want to learn, and so I would say something that I've kind of gradually learned over time is that people are always like regardless of their age, sometimes they're kind of always going to be stuck in their ways, and they're going to like continue thinking whatever they're going to think. And sometimes there's just nothing that you can say or do about it. And you just have to kind of be okay with them being prejudiced, because obviously, like, sometimes they're not intentionally being racist. It's just the lack of knowledge and them educating themselves. But I know that there is a lot of like subtle, like underlying racism though within the Latino community, and like as far like being like Caribbean as well. Kind of just looking darker, being compared to someone who's lighter, and just, I don't know, that's just always something that is going to be an ongoing issue, but people are not going to really change their mentality unless they really decide to and take it upon themselves.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm not trying to like downgrade any communities, but it's so real what they say about how Hispanic communities can be so like, there's a word like tercos, or just like stubborn, in Spanish. And it's because like, they grew up in a certain, I don't know what the word is, I guess in a certain age. Yeah. I don't know, like where it's just like, that was normal to them. And it's like, try to explain to your like immigrant parent, how to do certain things, or how to say certain things, or how they're perceived. And then they'll be like, oh, your generation's too sensitive. And it's always that, like, oh, you guys just like don't get it. And like Janelle said, I think sometimes the best thing is to just like let it go. Unfortunately, you can't change everybody's minds. And I don't know, I think that's just a very universal experience for like immigrant people in general, to have such a drastic change between like their current generation and their like past generations from parents. So that's just, I know you wanted to talk about your boyfriend too, because you have a situation with that.
So kind of tying into like what I've learned is that it's a lot easier for me, for instance, to kind of fit into this systematic stereotype of, white beauty, and kind of leave those cultural, features behind, like big hoops, thin eyebrows, or even just cultural clothing, stuff like that. It's a lot easier for me to kind of hide my identity if I chose to, because I am white passing, and I can do that. I can transcend my own race. And even though I am Latina and my boyfriend is Latino, it's a lot harder for him because he is dark skinned, and you can't hide that regardless of what you do. You know what I mean? People automatically might stereotype him in a lot different way rather than when they look at me. Just with police, people of higher power, everything like that. People will always look at us differently, regardless of, even if we're just walking by, you obviously look at me and him very differently. And it's kind of concerning because we're both of the same ethnicity. And it's just like, why am I given this privilege? And why is he still stuck with this like stereotype. Burden? Burden of having to like, carry all these issues with him just because of the color of his skin.
Yeah. What's your boyfriend's ethnicity, you said?
He's Mexican.
Yeah,
yes.
too. Yeah.
But
so
he's like dark.
Yes, like Afro-Latino, curly hair, dark skin. Yes.
Yeah. So that's where that comes in. It's so hard to just I guess, teach that to society when it's like, you know, everyone against you. And it's funny how you said that about, like, people will always look at you differently. Because I guess I didn't, people sometimes just, the way that I speak, I have an accent because my Spanish was my first language. So I don't, I had to learn English throughout time. But I had this like story. It's kind of funny, but it's kind of crazy. I used to work at a church, at a Christian church. And I'm not Christian, but I was broke, so I needed money. And it was right after I had graduated the first time from Palomar. So I went to work there, and I was like doing, I had a film and electronic media degree, so I was doing like video editing for them, and like they did live streams of their services. So I was doing that, and there was a guy, he was a white guy who worked with me, and he was like 60 something, 70, like he was doing too much, like all the time, like respectfully, but he was also like an older dude. So this church was a predominantly white church. Like there was, I'm not that dark skinned, but I was the darkest person there. If you, that puts into perspective how white it was, you know? Yeah, that's that, to put into perspective how white that church was. And everybody was super nice. Like I never felt like discriminated against or anything. But then one time I saw this Mexican family come in. But then like the guy that worked with me, he came up to me like when the Mexican family came in that day, and he said, "Hey, is that your family?"
Oh my gosh.
I'm not even joking, dude.
Of course.
He said nothing. He just came up to me, "Hey, is that your family?" I was like, "Huh?" I'm like, no, that's not. And then I really wanted so badly to go like, "Why'd you ask?" That's to see if I would get him uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah.
But then he just went, "Oh, okay," and then walked away. That's all. And I was like, oh, that was just crazy to see, like, because we have our own issues in like the Latinx community, I guess, but to see that other people, specifically white people, sometimes feel like they have, I guess, that privilege of asking certain like intrusive questions like that.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if you guys have any experiences like that.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I've like had a number of experiences where, you know, I'm like at the store with my mom and my little sister, and some random white lady will come up and be like, "Oh, your hair is so pretty. Is it real?"
Oh.
And I'm just like, "Girl, you see it growing out of my head right now." Like, you know, or because my mom, she's lighter than me. So like I'm obviously like I'm pretty dark. So I look a little bit more like my dad. And so sometimes if we're out like all together as a family, and you know my mom is kind of like the one like lightest one out of all of us, people kind of look at us a little differently. I don't really care because I'm just like, well, I know my family's attractive, so like, you know, like I know they're probably looking for other reasons, but like you could sometimes still kind of feel like, what the heck are they thinking? Why can't they just like mind their business? Yeah. Like people just love to stare and be in like brown people's business. Like I feel like they want to mind everyone else's but their own.
Yeah. For sure.
And so another kind of crazy story, like relating a little bit, it just happened to me yesterday with my next door neighbor. So my neighbors they're Mexican, and I have one who, like, he's, I guess you could say, like, the father of the household, right? And so he's, like, the older one. And so he obviously has, like, his ways that he's set in with, like, the way that he thinks about race and, like, calling people certain names and stuff like that. But he's very closed off. Like it's only like what he knows is right and like nothing else, you know, and there's no type of getting through to him. But maybe because of like his age, there was like, he just kept on repeating like the same thing over and over again in front of my dad and I, and we were just kind of standing there because he was telling a story, because he does landscaping, and he was telling a story about his two neighbors who are white and black, and they just kind of like rant about each other, and he kept on saying how his white neighborhood kept on saying like, oh, it's because she's fucking black, like, you know, like, but he just kept on saying that
that specific part.
Yes. And I was like, okay, like,
we get it.
You know, like, I know they're black, and so I kind of just kept on trying to tell him, like, you know, así son la gente, like, that people are gonna do, you know, and then he proceeded to ask me what he could say, because he kept on saying like negro or like negrito, and like, it's not bad, but like, it's not the best thing either, I guess you could say. And so finally he asked me like, oh, what can I say instead? And I was like, you can be like Afroamericano or like morenito, or like, which is like a little bit like más cariñoso, but so it was just kind of funny
wild
experience.
Yeah, it's like recent too, and that's like, that's crazy. I think it's just specifically when people keep repeating themselves, it's always like, okay, like, you're trying so hard to just like deviate from that, like that topic, but they just won't. I guess I wanted to ask, why do you guys think it's so like normalized? Is there anything that comes to mind as to why it's so normalized today still?
Do you want to go first?
You gotta go.
Okay. For me, I think colorism is just prevalent in all communities. If you're Hispanic, if you're white, if you're black, Asian even. And I think it's very prevalent in Latinx communities because I feel like we're probably one of the most diverse colors and people and just everything. Like, we literally range from white to black. And I feel like that's such a beautiful thing. But at the same time, Latino communities really make a key point in pointing it out. Like, if I go over to my boyfriend's house, you know, the güerita, you know, obviously I'm very fair skinned. And if he comes over to my family, obviously he's the darkest one there. And it's not something that should be pointed out. But at the same time, I don't take offense to it. And I'm sure he doesn't take offense to it either. And I feel like that's just kind of like what we gotten used to. You know what I mean? Like, even with them, like, there are all sorts of different shades. And same with my family as well. Like, we all kind of embrace everything. So we almost kind of think it's okay to, you know, point those things out because, like, you know what, we're family, like, it's not personal. But if somebody else does it, then it's like, you gotta check exactly, we gotta check that. So that's why I think it's so normalized, because we kind of do take the Latinx community as we're all one family, and you know, we know it's not coming out of ill will, but then it kind of trains other people to think that's okay when it's not.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
That's literally, like, you hit the head on the nail with that one. Like, pretty much, I agree that it's kind of more acceptable or like normalized, I guess, because that's just kind of, sometimes we don't correct it, and so it's just kind of what people are just going with what they know and what they've always been taught. And then when you do kind of maybe turn or become like that defiant or like resilient against it, then all of a sudden you're like,
doing too much.
You're doing too much. And so in some ways I feel like colorism is, but also isn't normalized, because then when you have those like few instances where you actually want to speak up, like sometimes you're looked at as wrong for that. And that's definitely needs to be like switched around, you know, because I don't know, it's just really backwards. And I can kind of relate to as well, like being like with my previous relationship or whatever, just being the token black girl because he was Mexican. And so you know, obviously it's kind of like, ooh, like Janelle, the morenita, is coming over, and you know, he's never had a girlfriend who looks like this. And so I kind of felt like at some point it was getting to be where he just liked having me on his arm as like a trophy kind of thing to like. And then the fact that I speak Spanish and I know how to dance to like Mexican music and all of these other different contributing factors, I felt like it was just kind of him like showing me off in a weird way.
It's like fetishization.
Yes, exactly.
It's really weird.
And so, colorism and race and everything is just, it's weird. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like gnarly to hear all these stories, and it's happening literally daily, you know, for everyone, and especially for people who are more like brown or black, you know, it's just like their daily experience, you know.
Yeah.
And like how you said right now, something that was really interesting, I hear my family like talk about like morenitos or like black people, and it's like sometimes it's only pretty when they think it's pretty, you know. It's like, why is it like for example, Rihanna, because she has like colored eyes, she's like, oh, she's gorgeous, and it's like, why is everybody else not, you know? Like, think about that, like your internalized racism, and what that really means to unpack it, and like why are some people and some features good, or like in your past partner, like why is it only good to have somebody to show them off because of their color of their skin? It seems a little bit fetish like, and also
Creepy.
creepy and weird.
Yeah, just
like
weird.
Why are you gonna do all that?
Yeah.
But that's like you know how they always say that thing too, which is it's so cringe. It makes me like, just when they say like the spicy Latina thing, I'm like,
yes. Oh my gosh.
girl, knock it off. Knock it off right now. I hate that. Like, and like I hate that, like I get mad because then it's like it almost proves it right, you know. But I'm like, you don't understand like why it makes me upset. But we have a couple minutes left, and I guess I wanted to wrap up. Any last comments? Kaylin, do you have anything to say before we kind of like close it off?
No, it was really cool meeting Janelle and kind of like hearing everything. Kind of just like also your guys' different point of views as well, because everybody's experience is different. Everybody grows up in different families, but I'm glad like we're all still able to come together as one and kind of, you know, unite.
Janelle, also thank you so much for being with us today. I think your perspective put a lot of people in thought, or put people into thinking, you know, when they listen to this. And I guess I just wanted to ask you, what is something you wish more people understood about, or better about, the colorism in the Latinx communities, or just in general?
Something that I wish people knew more about was, or maybe I just wish that people would educate themselves more about it, and like actually do the internal work and external to kind of maybe knock down the colorism, or like kind of keep it to like a minimum or something, like try and not make it as like prevalent, because it's like, yeah, we all are like come from like different backgrounds, and we have like different experiences and stuff. I still feel like there's some sort of unity in like relation that we can all, you know, some kind of common ground that we can all relate to. And so I think that if people were just a little bit more open-minded and not so quick to judge people off the color of their skin, just the tone of it, I think everybody would be a little bit happier, for sure.
Yeah. I agree. I think the common ground is we can only find that with conversation like this, you know. So I think conversations like this should be encouraged. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Kaylin, for also helping me out with this podcast. Course. And you can check us out on social media and the Telescope, and also on our website. You can find us through Palomar. So thank you for being here, and this concludes the episode.
Yay.